is the TheraPodcast. If you're a therapist, educator, counselor in training, or anyone interested in therapy, this is your epicenter for everything you should know. There are so many people in the world going through extreme mental and emotional issues, and we want to spotlight all the things we believe that work and the things that don't. They are wise sages, caring, intelligent, and are leaders in mental health counseling, the TheraPodcast. And here they are, Doctors Martin Wesley and David Whittinghill.
Hello, this is Dr. Martin Wesley with the TheraPodcast. I'm glad you joined us. I'm also here with Dr. David Whittinghill. How are you doing, David?
Great, Marty. How are you?
Not too bad. I heard you were going to go out in the boat, but you still haven't got that boat in the water. You don't even know if it's seaworthy, do you? Or...
Yeah, we had it at one time, but yeah, we got rained out last week. Yeah.
Really?
Torrential rain.
Florida doesn't have that. At least we avoided a hurricane this year, so that's good. Or at least so far, I should say.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood. And we're also joined by Dr. Rob Lima. I know you've been here with us before, Rob, but that was before I could add the doctor to your name. So.
Yeah.
Mr. Lima then.
Yeah, Mr. Lima, no, Dr. Lima. Yeah.
Or Rob. I'm good. I'll respond to anything. Yep.
Yeah, that works too. So
congratulations, Rob. You're part of the problem now.
Exactly.
And as some of you heard, we also are joined by Dr. Marty Jencius. How are you doing, Marty?
I'm doing okay. I mean, I enjoy the podcasting piece, and it's nice to be on the other side of the microphone.
You do it well, though. You have a really good voice for this. I think you actually didn't you do some radio in the past?
Yeah, I worked in commercial radio about the same time I was working on my master's in counseling, and worked in Champaign, Illinois. I worked in Ocean City, Maryland, and then worked in Myrtle Beach before going back for my PhD.
Wow. That's that's fascinating. So, yeah, I'm curious more about that now, but here you are, you're into that field. How do you merge these two? What got you into counselor education?
After I finished working in radio, I took a job with the state of South Carolina and got really frustrated with how the state was managing mental health issues. And I was young enough and arrogant enough, and some people say I'm just old and arrogant now, but young enough and arrogant enough at that time where I said, I am going to get my PhD and I am going to come back and fire all these people. And that's what drove me into getting the advanced degree. I always knew I wanted to do something other than radio, just not at that time in my life. So it was nice to get back connected with academics and kind of took a different path after that.
And yet you've sort of merged the two, I think, in some ways. In all your influence in counselor education since, I think, having that technological savvy and interest, and you sort of changed the field, I would argue, in some ways related to, to merging those two interests.
Yeah, one of my default jobs at the last radio station I worked at was fixing the computer. And they figured at that point I had a master's degree and I should know how to fix a computer. No connection between the two. But I started messing around with technology and got involved in developing CESNET when I was a doctoral student. And then when you start getting that kind of reputation and that kind of branding, it's like, okay, what's the next thing I can do? Well, websites are new. Let me do websites. Well, Multimedia is new. Let me do multimedia. 3D virtual worlds are new. Let me do that. Let's do podcasting. Let's do video casting. So I think my talent is seeing a new technology and thinking, how would this work in our profession, and bringing it in that way. And it's, for me, it's play. I mean,
Yeah.
writing a book is not play. Messing around with tech and finding applications in counseling is play.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought up CESNET, because that's really where I want to go, especially is just, what was your vision, for CESNET in the beginning? And has it in some ways have you continued that same vision, or is it changed over the years? I'm just curious,
I've never written about CESNET because I'd rather do than write in a lot of ways. And maybe that's a fault, but I'm going to give you a story. This is a scoop. It's never been told in media. Because I looked up my resume to find out the exact date. I was at a Midwestern North Central ACEs meeting
Mhm.
on October 12th, 1995. So almost 30 years ago. And we had a table discussion, lunchroom kind of table discussion. And the speaker was talking about ways and innovations that we can do. And I sat at my table, and I'd been playing around with Delphi groups and different types of communication stuff back in those days with dial-up modems. And I said, we should do a listserv. And sitting two tables away was David Kleist, who's at Idaho State University. And he said, we should do a listserv. So we both simultaneously kind of suggested it. And then I rushed back to my university and convinced my chair to sign off on the permission for me to start a listserv. So that's how CESNET gets started. But I can't tell a story without mentioning David Kleist, because it was not necessarily just my brainchild. It was just that kind of connection. So, and whenever I see David, I remind him of that he has a part of CESNET, whether he likes it or not. He's as a co-parent, he's just to blame with it. It was small. I mean, we had like 200, 300 members. And the idea was communication and ideas and sharing ideas. And that's how it stayed pretty clearly. People were sharing information about how to teach this course or what books they're using. And we still have some of that, but it's morphed into a 7,000 plus member listserv. And it's in a place now where I feel like I have to reparent it, because people are using it for just kind of blasting the listserv with requests for their dissertation studies. And it's flooded that way. So recently I've adopted this standard, which is true for listservs, but people don't know this, nor do research methodologists teach this to people who are using listservs for their research, is that first you got to ask the person who runs the listserv whether you can post something. And particularly when it comes to information on studies that you're kind of spamming the list with. And the person who runs the list has the right to say no. So that's one thing. And I've had to filter that stuff. So I filter everything that comes to the list now, and it's much more time intensive. And if you're going to do a study on a list using listserv members, it should be related to the members of the list. So it's counselor education and supervision. It's not a test field for LPCs. It's not a test field it's strictly people who are talking about counselor pedagogy and the roles of academia and those doctoral students who are on the list, who are studying to be part of that. It's so there. I get lots of requests now from people who and psychology programs who really aren't part of the counseling circle submitting their research because here's a body of 7,000 plus members with
Mhm.
very little relevance, but the word's out, and apparently it's a free way to be able to get access. And then sometimes I get emails from people who say, I use your listserv and nobody responded to my study. Like that was my problem.
Yeah.
Um, so, so anyways, I ran on about that, but that's sort of where it was, where it is now, and hopefully we'll get more people posing questions and posing requests for resources. I think people have found other ways to do that, but hopefully we'll see more of that to continue to develop with the listserv.
Mhm. Well, I feel I'm asking all the questions. You guys feel free to ask too, but I've still got about 40 here. So,
Yeah. I can, Marty, I can remember when you first started the listserv, and that's it, in its pure form. It was a fantastic tool because we were swapping syllabi and other pedagogical methods for teaching particular classes, and it was fantastic. And I don't know if you remember it or not, but in 1999, when I was at UAB, you talked and took questions for my class over the
Hmm.
internet on a dial-up call, which was just phenomenal back then. I mean, it's every day now, but back
Yeah.
then it was unheard of.
Yeah, I would always, at that time, I was studying the use of what you would call like little golf ball cameras they used to have and interfacing it with, I think it was Microsoft Meeting.
Microsoft something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had to get all of the codecs right in order to get it to work. You had to have good bandwidth. There was all sorts of struggles in doing it back then. And I was spending a good deal of time playing with that technology because we had a group of Army chaplains where I was at, and at Fort Benning, who were coming up to the campus that I was at for classes, or we would go down there, and they wanted to use that technology for supervision. And
Mhm.
so we were kind of testing it out for that purpose. And so David uh, allowed me to try that with his class.
yeah,
Yeah, it was fantastic.
that's funny. Yeah, yeah, you and it's interesting. You showed it. You talked about this vision, and again, I'm curious about some of the other challenges you've had because I know, and I would agree. We've taken over related to the research studies, and I really wonder if anyone's doing any of them. So
Yeah.
I don't know what that's all about, but I'm sure that there's been challenging times for you along the way because it's been challenging for some of us who I think try to bring discussion and use it for what I think you had in mind. But then there's some I don't know if I would call them bad actors or it's like they put on this face of that is like an avatar being in a listserv and like nobody knows them so they can be sort of jerks and
Not
very
just
disrespectful and again we should be modeling relationships and being able to communicate with other people without resorting to character assassination, but it seems like that has been a real challenge. Not necessarily you can do anything about it, I don't know, but I'm just curious, some of your other thoughts about the challenges of having a listserv like this.
Well, I used to keep it unmoderated, and it has been up until about 6 months ago. So
Yeah.
people would have their discourse, and I would get back channeled emails from people saying, you need to kick this person off the list. And I was like, yeah. I mean, if I did that, then I get into the middle of the battle. And, if you have objection to this person, you should be writing them back channel, not me
Hmm.
back channel. I'm not going to I'm not going to daddy this thing. But there were a few cases. One I think was, I don't know what got into me, but there were a couple of academics that would constantly fight back and forth. And I had it so you could post as many times as you wanted to on the listserv per day, and wound up setting it down to twice because I didn't want them to monopolize the dialogue. And
It's
at
funny,
one
I can put
point,
names to it, but
you can put names to it. I'm not going to.
I have a feeling I know who you're talking about, but go ahead.
To protect the innocent,
Yeah, exactly.
or not so innocent, to protect me. I'm the innocent here.
Yeah.
And the it got into an argument, and I decided that it was the holidays, and I was just going to shut the whole list down. And I tried to back channel one of these folks and say, you need to change the tenor of how you're speaking and how you're presenting on the list. And the email I got back was, you're violating my right to free speech.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So it continued on, and I said, we're shutting down the list for the Christmas holidays. I don't want to have to deal with it. You don't want to, we'll pick it back up January 15th or something like that. And I got a phone call from one of the individuals who said, I wish couldn't we come to some compromise? I really wish that we could do this and continue this on. I'm sorry that you're doing this and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm not violating your free speech anymore. I'm violating everybody's free speech. So you can't be singled out as me violating your free speech. And since then, the few times a person posts, the behavior is completely different. And so I appreciate that. And occasionally there were bad actors. Like for a short period of time, there was a person who signed up and posted as Hugh Janus. So you got to say it really quickly together to get that pun.
Yeah.
And they were posting outlandish stuff. So I went in and stopped anything coming from that email address. I had to. But there were, for a long time, I had colleagues who insisted that I was Hugh Janus. And then I was just doing that to provoke stuff on the list. So other than that, I think people kind of show their bad side to doctoral students, and doctoral students are appalled. But, as a doctoral student, I wasn't much better than everybody else anyway. So I would probably have been appalled too. So, yeah. And then people chide other people for like, how you look at what you're demonstrating and your behavior, and this is not professional, and blah, 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 I'm like.
I remember doing a class once for doctoral students. It was about 12, 15 years ago. And I used some of those posts probably that you're talking about from these two people that were back and forth all the time. And I remember highlighting all of the logical fallacies in their arguments and from back and forth. And I would, use that in my research class, just about, again, just trying to show them how to avoid this type of communication and to improve their logic.
Yeah, well, CESNET is 30 years old.
Yeah.
And things definitely change in 30 years. A couple of years ago or a year and a half ago, I decided to try a different format because people don't want to get swallowed up with research requests. So there is a list. It doesn't act as a listserv, but it acts as kind of a static posting place called CESNET D or CESNET Discourse. CESNET L is CESNET Listserv. And folks can figure out how to sign up for both of those. There are directions at CESNET.online is the website, www.cesnet.online. And that website will tell you how to sign up for those. And there was like a bunch of people who moved off of CESNET L because of the insanity that was going on it, and then moved over to CESNET D. Much more quieter list, but it's static. It's meant for some reposting and replies and things like that. But I have some rules about not posting research requests on it, and people attempt to do that, and then I delete the post so it doesn't exist.
To me, that's an
But yeah.
example where you know, like you said, you were always up on technology, and this was a way to actually improve CISNET. And actually, and I'm curious if you were wanting to move totally that direction, which to me, it's a better format. It's you have much more control. It's user friendly in every which way, but people haven't taken off on it. They're still going to use the L version.
Yeah, because they can post their research stuff, whereas CESNET D doesn't allow that. And at one point, I said I was going to sunset CESNET L,
Say that
and
3 times.
yeah, and that was supposed to be this fall, and I guess I didn't do it. But both of them coexist. They function with a little different level of immediacy. You can set up CESNET D to be able to send you emails when new things come up, or you can set it up as an app function. So you open up an app and you get the list as it is. But yeah.
To me, I'm just, I think of you seeing this all the way through, and it's almost like a history lesson of our whole profession. And I'm curious if you're looking back. I wish I could get all your archives, but I know we can all get them sort of for a certain period of time. But I'm just curious, looking at it as a historian in a sense, and this curator of this historical um, communication piece. What have you learned about our profession? Is it going in the right direction, the wrong direction? Is it really meeting the needs of our profession? How have we failed it? How have we served it well?
Um, I don't know. You're going to get me to wax philosophically about this. Um, I I think I think it still serves a purpose. It serves a different purpose than what it was when it started, which is why I started a different platform to maybe continue to serve the purposes that it does. Um, I think uh, people have changed in how they get information and use information. Whereas early, as David mentioned, CESNET was more of a resource sharing and community. Now it's turned more into it's still that, but it's more of a immediacy in terms of it. It doesn't generate longer discussions around topics unless somebody posts something that really provokes members of of CESNET L. Um,
Mhm.
so it's a little sad, I think, but I think people are getting their needs met in other ways. Um, in terms of looking for the resources through other colleagues or through other ways of connecting. That's fine. I also think generationally, our attitudes about communication has changed, where things are short form and they're quick, they are unvetted, and people are taking in information that way. Um, Even doing a half hour to an hour podcast is considered kind of old school
Mhm.
in ways of getting people to sit and listen to whatever story someone's telling. So
Yeah, but all that said, Marty, when just the creation of CESNET changed counseling profession. It's touched a lot of lives. The exchange of information that's taken place over the years is to your credit. It wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah, and everybody says, "Oh, that must be so much hard work." No, I just set it and forget it. It's now the hard work is now I get these posts. Now I get every post, and I have to make it. I have to go in and check my email and a couple of times a day, and I have to read them and then approve them directly if they're things like position posts, or if it's a research post, the person hasn't figured out the different pathway that we use for asking for research posts. So then I have to email them back and say, no, go this way to do it. It's become a lot more labor intensive, but people would always say, oh, you've got to deal with all those emails. No, I don't. The group had the potential and the possibility to, and they did kind of police themselves. So I would go, let's see what this post brings. And someone would bring a counter point of view and it would eventually get settled. Um, and so, yeah, only like one occasion did I have to shut it down. But yeah.
Things I've noticed, I think there's a lot of careful curating you probably have done. I mean, I'm not you, but
Yeah.
I have seen an evolution. I joined, I think my first master's degree was roughly 99 to 2001, and that's when I first joined. And I've been on and off CESNET since then. When things sort of
Mhm.
picked up and things started to get more obnoxious, I'd sort of leave and then come back. But I think that you have probably done more more than you've thought. And one of the things that I've noticed a couple of things. First is that when I've been in more research intensive schools with students who haven't had professional jobs first, I've noticed a lot of gush, when I know some of the people who posted and they weren't used to professional communication and just sort of dump and run. Notice that
Mhm.
versus when I've been at more professional schools with people who are returning back to graduate school, have worked in a professional setting, and they know how to communicate with others. The posts tend to be different. That's one thing,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to see that we're sort of coming back to that. The other thing I've noticed is that folks tend to start discussions and PM me for more information. We'll start a subgroup somewhere else. They'll chat offline. They'll chat through email. They'll find other ways to get that done. And I sort of like that streamlining. Like I don't feel like I'm getting drawn into big long discussions that I'm not interested in, or stuff that's just ad hominem attacks, frankly.
Yeah. But then all we are is a message kiosk then.
Hmm.
There's part of me that I can press the delete key if I'm not interested in that particular discussion. But I
Hmm.
would like to see more stuff done publicly than off. And there are reasons why people don't want to do that on the list. I understand that. But I think I'm losing the benefit of whatever thread they're going down in terms of information.
Hmm.
I think people have gotten better and have gotten politer, if that's possible, than some of the chaos we had 15 years ago on the list. And that's really fighting it now, considering our world and political situation, that people are actually getting politer and more purposeful in their online listserv communication. I haven't had to deal with too many folks who, and maybe that's because I'm just insensitive and not as good as a wink to a blind horse, that people are saying lousy things and I just don't see it or don't interpret it that way, or I'm not sensitive. I'm desensitized to it, so I don't react to it. But I think people are genuinely being better when it comes to the listserv communication. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Now, I'm curious. Yeah, I actually have seen the same thing, Marty, and I'm curious though. I'm curious if it was just because there's a couple people that don't do it anymore, which pretty much guided those 10, 15-year-old discussions, or again, maybe we've learned a few things, and the vitriol that has been there in the past has maybe taught us to, like you say, be a little kinder. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think there are places I like to go that are. I want to make sure it's a safe. If I look on stuff on Reddit, if I'm doom scrolling on something on Reddit, I'm going to get really angry in about 10 minutes. I don't need that on my listserv or any listserv that I'm accessing. So I think there's a bit of a sanctuary on a professional listserv that you don't get on other sort of public threads that people are also now we're using more of those public thread stuffs than we did 15 to 20 years ago too. So
I do need to tell a funny story. I think I've told you before when we were getting reintroduced, but I have been, at ACA or ACES or something, and some people start talking to me and they're just saying, really good stuff about me and that they recognize me. And I told them I really appreciate that. It's very nice. And then I'll walk away and then I think, I didn't realize, but they were actually thinking I was you. Anyways, I just wanted you to know it was sort of an honor to be mistaken for the other Marty. So.
well, I don't know. They could actually be saying genuinely nice things about you, and not me. You're just projecting them on me. Um, so yeah, and I find you a very nice, gentle, thoughtful person. So they could not, it could be that they are not mistaken.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I have, what do you think about, again, I know we've talked even maybe off camera and stuff and off with the mics being off, but the, you're, I'm in my 60s, you're in your 60s, David's already retired. And there's part of us that wants to look back and think that we have made a contribution and in our field, in the world, and and you have, absolutely you have. But it is interesting that when people think about you, they're going to be thinking about this thing called CESNET. That again. Is sort of still old school, and it's funny how some of those original ideas are still sometimes how it defines you. How do you want to be defined?
I don't know. I think my niche is technology and technology application to the field. And I don't think that's ever been a trend of value in our field. So some of that I feel sort of getting lost in it because we have various trends that are popular and that become themes of conferences and so every title has to have those words in it in order for it to be meaningful because that's what's meaningful to the larger group. But technology has never been one that's been stepped up beyond sort of a niche way of doing stuff. But I think, it makes it easier for me to do stuff with technology and counseling and feel like I'm making a contribution than if I'm getting swallowed up on some larger issue or larger topic. So, staying in my zone, which I really enjoy, I really love doing, um, is what the fun piece is for me. And so, but always kind of moving on to the next thing because I'm glad CESNET runs itself because I would get bored if I was shackled to that all day. Um, and so, now I'm doing stuff, as you know, with podcasts and video casts and have a bunch of those going. And at the same time, I'm doing a lot of work with AI and AI application to our field. And, 2 years ago, we were fighting whether or not that's ethical or should we be using that or what, and I either the battle gave up on that or people came over and are starting to fight on the side that supports the use of augmented intelligence, augmented reality for productivity and such. So that's sort of, I feel less like I have to defend it anymore
Mhm.
whereas it was always fun for me to get into battles about it. Um, and
I've been in the same place. It's like you know, there's certain people like me and you, for example, we just love technology and we're going to embrace it, and because we know it's going to change the field, whether or not we're on board or not. And then, but I want to be ahead of it, and bring my students with me, rather than always thinking that there's the devil behind it. Anyways, I am curious what you think about some of these colleagues of ours that do think that there's a devil behind it, and anyone that would use it, and yet they're using it. They don't even realize sometimes they're using it with Grammarly or something like that. Or these are all elements of AI. Anyways, yeah, I don't know if there's anything you could say to them to help bring them on board that this is something that's here to stay. And in fact, we need to be thinking of where it is going next.
yeah, I used to get real frustrated by colleagues who didn't get it.
Mhm.
And that was all about me. It wasn't about them necessarily. But I kept saying it was about them. And then I realized that, you know, years ago when we first started doing telephone counseling, that was kind of my volunteer introduction. I was working a hotline for a drug abuse and overdose agency, and people would say, "Oh, telephones, you can't do real counseling on telephones." And it was like, meh, you can have an impact. It's just a different vehicle. And so people have always been, and one of the chapters I wrote was on counseling Luddites. People have always been, there's been a fraction of folks that have always kind of been doubtful and cautious about technology, either from a lack of skill set on how to use it or a lack of knowledge, or they're paying attention to the media. And the only thing the media does about technology is talk about the dangers and the mistakes and the problems and the hallucinations when it comes to AI, because that makes much more interesting copy than the possibilities of it. So I've kind of tempered my reaction to colleagues who don't get it. And then I see them 2 years later using it.
Yeah.
And then kind of, and these were like, oh, they are such a good author. They've written thousands and thousands of works. And then I sit on a committee with them and they're using it to identify, functions that we need to do for a particular task. There's a little personal moral victory inside me that says if we've got them, we can get even people that are harder core against it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've stopped worrying about that. My goal is kind of find new stuff. So whenever I'm talking about it, there's a point where somebody, if not everybody in the audience, goes, wow. So there should be a lot of wow parts. I'm not
Mm.
interested in presenting information that people already have readily accessible to them. So that's my goal is the wow. It's not the next book. It's not winning them over necessarily. So,
Yeah.
Where do you see it going, Marty? AI and counseling.
wow. Well, we were all supposed to be on moving sidewalks and flying cars after
That's right.
there's an old Pete Seeger song about the 20th century is almost over. What happened to the flying cars and what happened to the moving sidewalks. So you're asking a fool, where do you think it's going? So I'll give you a fool's response. Um, and that was stalling. Um, I don't know. I think we're gonna blend these things together better. And there are already models that we can do. I mean, the problem with the models that people are using for AI now, where they say, "Oh, I'm just getting garbage," is because they're putting garbage in.
Exactly.
They're not putting in all sorts of documentation that would teach the model to give them a better response. So, when somebody says, "Oh, I just got this weird stuff," did you pay for it? Oh no, I don't pay for it. I use the free version. Well, that's why people pay for it. What information did you give it? Oh, I
Mm.
told it what I wanted it to do. Did you give it a template? Did you give it a sample? You want to create a new syllabus? Did you give it an old syllabus?
Right.
Where did you? And then people are like, oh, that's giving away all my information. That's,
Yeah.
like you're giving away gold,
Yeah.
and that your
And like
information
it's not
isn't out
already
there.
available online
Yeah, it's
anyway.
not like it's already available there, and that somehow um, people are going to, somehow there's going to be some social interest out there where people might want to use it.
Mhm.
Um, you know,
Yeah, God
so
forbid we share that with others. And the other aspect is like we had an original idea anyways. It's all coming from everywhere else,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
So David, I think we're going to do more integration of that. I think we're also going to do more integration of AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality. And those are two other areas I'm not playing with for research purposes, but I do a podcast on virtual reality and AR headsets. And so I'm spending a lot of time there as part of my hobby. So I think we've got some interesting possibilities. I think people are already using chatbots
Mhm.
in order, and of course, the stories we hear are the ones who attempted suicide, or the parents pulled them from counseling, and then they started talking to a chatbot who told them to kill themselves. Um, garbage in, garbage out. I feel for the parents in that case, but you're blaming the messenger, and the messenger wasn't being used properly. I think we'll get better at that. Um, but those are the stories that hit the press. Those are the stories
Right.
that people want to demonize stuff because it makes us all feel better because change is hard.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if we demonize change, then we don't have to change and we can stay comfortable.
Which is a great point because all we hear is the negatives. We don't have any data on how many people were actually helped who engaged a chat bot.
Yeah.
We
So,
won't ever know that.
and the problem with this is like all problem in counseling research. It's very idiosyncratic. It's very specific to a case, and you can't make large generalizations from data as easily. You can't. I guess you could do some meta-analysis on it, but there would be too many differentiating factors between cases that it would be hard to come to any grand assumption about the practicality of using that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, I get such a pleasure, like you've sort of done, where you've seen people that have been against it change, but they'll work on a rubric for half the day, and then I can show them how to take, just the basics of the instructions and put it into a chat GBT, or some kind of GBT that's been set up for rubrics, and just have this thing happen in less than 3 seconds, and they're just mouth drops and realizing that that was better than what they spent the whole last 6 hours on, in many
Well,
ways.
I struggle with this because I had some students tell me that a faculty member was having them go through journals from the last 10 years or 5 years and do a trend analysis on what was covered in those journals. And they said it was tedious work. We had to sit there and go through all. I said, why didn't you just run all the table of contents through an AI bot? And they're like, oh, we were told specifically not to do that.
Well, yeah.
And I said, I wonder if you would have gotten the same results or similar results, or maybe results that you didn't see because it was a tedious task. And so, and then the second question is, what did you learn from that experience that you wouldn't have learned by just doing a AI analysis of it?
Yeah. No, things are changing, and research is one of those areas. My God, what you can do with the tools that are available now, and yet we sometimes hamstring our own students, not realizing that other professions don't have those same restrictions, and then we wonder why we're not doing as good a job as psychology and other professions. So, well, there's reasons. There's reasons. But anyways, just throwing that out. It's frustrating. So yeah, from CESNET to AI, and you've been, I do want to thank you, and I mean that seriously, for being a part of this, of being a leader, being almost, I guess, a founding father of the technology in our field. So
Well, there are a couple of names that I remember um, that were kind of keyed into it, but it wasn't their main thread. That when I was a doctoral student, I saw these folks as being, I couldn't wait for their next publication, which then turned out not to be anything about technology, but they were putting stuff up that was getting people excited. So I don't, it's hard for me to kind of take on a moniker of founding that direction. Um, but anyways, I'll take whatever you send my way.
yeah, that's again, but that's the way you respond on CISNET too, is and how we should all be responding is again with some humility and not thinking that we have all the answers and that we actually can, thank the people for that contribution, for their insight, but also recognizing the others that are involved. I think we could go a long way if we use that as a template of what you just said, even for how we respond on CISNET.
Yeah, and I miss those people. I mean, as a young assistant professor or doctoral student, I miss those mentors, you know?
Mm.
I know David and you, Marty, and you've had those people in your lives early on that helped shape that. And um, I miss that. And I don't buy that crap that you're the mentor now. No, I still need those
Yeah.
guys, those women from my past that helped me shape what I did.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And that's something that I think is really important that we say to these younger um, doc students and people coming in our profession is how important it is to have those mentors. And I got to admit, part of me is still mourning the loss of a good friend, and he died a couple of years ago. Larry Sexton he was like the
Hmm.
last mentor I had. And now everyone's a peer that are my age or a little older, and yeah, I do miss that. I got to admit, I'm still mourning having someone that I still look up to in that way. And while I look up to you and David and everyone around us, again, it's a different relationship in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. The Leshes, the Whitmers, the Striplings,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nicholas Vack. I miss him.
Yeah, talking from a religious background that I've had, excuse me, I was always told you needed three people in your life. You needed a Paul, which was like a mentor. You needed a Barnabas that was sort of like a peer, and you needed a Timothy that was sort of one that you're bringing up. But again,
Mm.
I have plenty of Timothys. I got plenty of Barnabas. I don't have any more Pauls.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But how
It
important.
makes going to conferences different.
Yeah, yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, good point. And one of the tools too that I think helped me when I was when I was looking for those mentors is that I saw some of them fail. And then I realized that, for one, they're human. And that I think is even a part that I needed to learn. The mentors were human, but that I also can just use them as a mentor for this particular area that I want to grow in. I don't have to look at their marriage or I don't have to look at
Yeah.
these other failings. I wanted to, this person was very important to me because for example, he just knew how to make relationships, and and he just cared about people. Barry Stevens comes to my mind as an example, a person that just was a lovable person, and I could use him as a mentor for that purpose. And then others, again, I saw how they were a great leader, but then I would see them fraternizing with people that they shouldn't be. And so that, again, so yeah, for people that are in our field that are looking for mentors, just realize they're human beings, and including all of us. and yeah, you don't have to look at all aspects in that way, if that makes any sense.
Sure, it does.
Like David, you can't use me as a mentor for fishing. I mean, you're the fishing mentor. So sorry, Dave or Rob. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I wanted to jump on the humility part of what you said. That I think there are times when we forget. There's to some extent, your professors will be idolized. They are a step above, but I think that we forget sometimes that to be humble, that when we're teaching, we're teaching people how to be counselors, and when I want the kind of counselor I want to work with is humble. They're kind. They accept you as you are, and so when you're leading your classes, that there's no need to be overly harsh, overly strict. Be yourself, for goodness sake. Call yourself out when you make a mistake. Little things like that are so important, and I don't see that. I've noticed a change in that over the years too. When I started professors, it wasn't Dr. blah, 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 Janine, Robert, Larry. It was things like that. And now all of a sudden we're doctor. And now all of a sudden it's, so there are differences within that. And I wonder, sort of a blast from the past, a phrase we used to use, is a little bit too big for our britches. You know what I mean? I wonder if we're a little bit, we've gotten a little bit too haughty. I don't know.
Yeah.
You really bring up a good point, Rob. Yeah. Sorry, Marty, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just agreeing with what Rob was saying.
Yeah. I've seen this with new professors, those that have just graduated, and they're going to say, damn, I earned this degree, and people are going to call me doctor. And they don't realize that they're just how they have changed. Nobody else has changed, but they have changed. Their attitude toward themselves has changed. And that has also become a barrier to them communicating with the people that it was quite natural before. Anyways, that I've seen is a real failing for some young professors, and they need to, like you say, humble themselves a little bit. And they often do, because they get the evaluations from the students very quickly, and they realize, holy crap, I need to change. Yeah.
Right. And step into the mentor role, because we're all going to, at some point we are going to become mentors, whether or not, while I can't conceive of myself in that way yet, I know that it probably will happen. And so whatever, fake it until you become it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be who I am. Just like, you all are who you are, and somebody will aspire to that. We'll touch the people we need to touch in a way. Right.
Yeah.
And we will become those mentors. But
well, thank you guys. This has been great. And Marty, again, I don't know how to, again, thanking you literally for myself and being part of this, what you've created with CESNET over the last many, many years, 20 plus years, at least for me. And, but also just being there. I mean, just being willing to come and talk to us, that I just appreciate that. So
Yeah.
Thanks. I enjoyed this a great deal. I mean, not just because it was about CESNET and stuff that I did, but I enjoyed the conversation a great deal.
yeah. Well, let's do it again. Yeah.
Okay.
Marty, will you tell the listeners one more time about where to sign up for?
Yeah. If you're interested in the CESNETs, the L's or the D's, you can go to www.cesnet, that's CESNET.online is the website.
Perfect.
If you have any trouble, there's ways to get hold of me through that.
Sounds
Excellent.
good. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the TheraPodcast. If you're a therapist, educator, a counselor in training, or anyone interested in therapy, this is your epicenter for everything you should know. Dr. Martin Wesley and Dr. David Whittinghill are counseling professors and therapists who have endless knowledge and wisdom. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, you can find our website at www.TheraPodcast.com. Find the show on all the major podcast platforms. And if you'd like to email Wesley, send it to wesleyphd@gmail.com. Take care and see you next time on the TheraPodcast.